Hello and welcome to lecture Pharmacology 103, Understanding How Drugs Work. So in this lecture we're going to revisit the volume of distribution. Why? Because the volume of distribution is really important. So just to reiterate what we talked about before, so this is a theoretical volume variable. It's not like an actual volume of any compartment, like a volume of your leg or a volume of your arm or volume of your GI system. Instead, what it does, it represents the size of the compartment that's going to be necessary to account for all of the drug as if it was dispersed throughout with the exact same concentration as it is in plasma. And the way that you would calculate volume of distribution is by knowing the dose that you administer and the initial drug concentration. The initial drug concentration we can actually measure in the blood right after intravenous administration. So right after that you would be able to calculate the volume of distribution for the drug. Another pharmacological or pharmacokinetic concept that I need you to be familiar with is clearance. And clearance is basically going to refer to the ability of the body, such as kidneys or liver, to eliminate the drug from the blood. The clearance is going to be expressed in units of volume per unit of time. So for example, liters per hour or milliliters per minute. Please know the units of clearance. And what you need to understand is that clearance is not going to represent the actual amount of drug that's going to be removed. So it's not going to represent like 10 milligrams of drug that's being removed in 5 minutes. Rather, what it's going to represent is actually the volume of the blood that's going to be cleared of a drug in a given time unit that we selected, for example, an hour. And depending on the concentration of the drug, clearance can actually be a different value. Also, we talked about before that drugs can be cleared renally metabolically by liver, for example. And you know that kidneys and liver, they actually function independent of one another. So they're kind of like two separate entities. I mean, they're two separate organs. So if one of them is affected, the other one is not going to be affected. For example, if you have a renal failure, that's not going to affect the clearance by liver. If you have a liver failure due to cirrhosis or maybe you have acute Tylenol poisoning, that's not going to affect clearance by the kidneys. So you can actually calculate the total clearance, and it's going to be a sum of the clearances by different organs. So renal clearance, metabolic clearance, and also all the other clearances combined together. So again, clearance may be viewed as a volume of plasma. So here's the initial concentration, a volume from which the drug is going to be removed over time during a specific time period that's being measured. The next concept I need you to understand is basically half-life. What is half-life? So half-life is basically going to be the amount of time that it's going to take for half of the drug, 50%, to be eliminated from the body. So if we're speaking mathematically, half-life is represented by this symbol. So half-life basically represents the amount of time that it takes to go from C0, and remember we talked about when we were calculating the volume of distribution, we talked about that C0 is the initial drug concentration, and we can actually calculate or measure this initial drug concentration right after administration of the drug. So half-life is going to be basically the time it takes to go from C0 to 1/2 C0. So why is it important? Why should we even care about half-life of the drug? Who cares about that? Well, actually, it's very important because we need to know, and half-life allows us to estimate how long does it take our body to get rid of all of the drug. So what we can do is, let's say somebody is going into surgery and they're given an anesthetic drug, we can actually estimate their recovery from anesthesia, and we will know when they will come out from being sedated. Another thing that we can do with it is we can know how to schedule or dose drug. If the schedule of the drug is going to be BID twice a day, TID 3 times a day, or QID 4 times a day. So what do I mean by that? So let's say we know that a drug has a short half-life. So then we're going to schedule it more frequently, and it's going to be given maybe 3 to 4 times a day. Versus if a drug has a very long half-life, we're going to maybe only dose it and give it once a day. So here you see that the initial dose of the drug called buprenorphine, so this was given, it was 16 milligrams. So what is a half? What is 50% of 16? That's going to be 8. Right? So what is a half-life of buprenorphine? The half-life of buprenorphine is the time it takes for us to go from 16 milligrams that was initially given to half of the 16 milligrams, or 8 milligrams. And the half-life of buprenorphine, therefore, is going to be 37 hours. Why? Because to get from 16 to 8 milligrams, it took us 37 hours based on this graph. So what does that tell me? Well, so here, looking at this graph, I can see that I need about 5 half-lives in order to effectively eliminate all of the drug that was initially given. Another information that you can get from a half-life is, oftentimes you wonder, physicians tell you have to take a certain drug and you have to continue taking it on a regular basis and you have to be compliant taking it. Why? Well, because it actually takes about 4 half-lives in order for us to achieve what's known as a steady state concentration of the drug. So in order to get to the steady state concentration where we're going to see beautiful therapeutic effects of this drug, we need to take about 4 half-lives in order to achieve that. So this is it for this lecture. Thank you so much. This was your introduction to pharmacology, and here are some references that you can reference the pictures and read more about pharmacokinetics.